Hello! Today I have a very interesting video for you in store because it's 3 weeks after the Buddhist weekend retreat, and I'm gonna share with you what habits are still in place and what has gone into the sand and I'm not doing it anymore. So I made quite a few notes, but these notes are literally from when, like 3 days after the retreat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just sharing where I am since the retreat, and then I'm going to have a look at my notes and see if I forgot something. So I would say the first 3 days after the retreat, I was like a habit angel. I did everything that I set out to do. Now that it's 3 weeks later, I would say that there is one thing that I did perfectly right after the retreat and that really helped me to stick to my plan. And that is my little whiteboard that I have on my desk. And I wrote 2 things on there, and those are my main rules to keep. And then obviously I wanted to generally keep healthy habits for myself, but I also knew that if I put 10 habit changes on there, it is pretty unrealistic. And then so it's more important to be realistic, because very often our brain tends to go to black and white, everything or nothing, and that's not true. It's better to do 3 things than nothing. So I focused on 2 things. I put 2 things very big on the whiteboard, and the first one was only to drink 2 coffees a day, 1 at 9 a.m. and then I wrote down, well, by 12 a.m. you have to have your last one. So anywhere between 9 and 12 I could have 1 or 2 coffees, however I feel. And then the other rule was all devices, all screens off at 11 o'clock, and don't go back on them even if you are having a rough time falling asleep. They all have to be off. Now some of you may say, no, it should be 10 o'clock or it should be whatever. You know, you and I, we have to do what feels right to us, and 11 o'clock felt right to me. And so those rules I have followed almost. I think I did sometimes have 3 coffees, but I would never have caffeine in the afternoon. So that's a big improvement for me, because I have, and I think a lot of people have this 4 o'clock dip where you start to feel really tired. And so I used to have either a coffee or a caffeinated tea, and now I just have a tea without any caffeine in it. So that's really a big improvement for me. And then I really am so happy that I was able to follow my second rule and always put my devices off at 11 o'clock. And yes, sometimes I was struggling to fall asleep, but I did not allow myself to go back on the devices. You know, before I started this, I was under the impression that if I don't go back onto my device, that I would fall asleep 50 minutes later, half an hour later. It did actually happen that sometimes I wasn't able to sleep until an hour later, sometimes an hour and a half. But you know what I noticed? Even if I couldn't fall asleep until midnight midnight, when I woke up the next morning, I wasn't as exhausted and tired as if I had stayed the extra 1.5 hours on my phone. And I tell you why I think that is. I don't know for sure, but it's just my assumption, is that when I was lying in bed, I noticed that I was processing information that I don't process when the phone is on. Basically, I was thinking about things in my day, or I was thinking about things that I forgot and I remembered, and then I wrote them down. And I was thinking about some memories, which I found actually really nice. I thought about some positive memories from the past that I hadn't thought about for a long time. And it just gave me a chance to be with me rather than to be with my phone. I mean, that's one of the things that was said in the very beginning of the retreat, is that a big part of that weekend was to take our attention away from our phone and back to us. And that's sort of how I felt with that time after 11 o'clock. Another thing I mentioned in the previous video was that when I came back, I didn't want to eat meat, even though I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian. So how did that pan out? I did really eat a lot less meat in the last 3 weeks, and I am going to continue to do that. I am not switching to being a vegetarian or vegan, but I am very aware that it would be better if I did. I'm gonna go into my notes now. Is that that? Oh, I deleted a few apps in the first 3 days. To be completely honest, I think I've brought them all back. However, I'm not using them as much as I used to. I really mostly only use them if there's a good reason to use them. Reality TV. This is another one I really stayed on track on. I just watched the programs that I really wanted to watch. I didn't, out of boredom or procrastination, went onto other programs just to waste my time. Hallelujah. I reduced my screen time watching comments of trash TV. I wrote down here, I feel a lot happier on Karma, and I can still subscribe to that even today. Like, I cannot believe I keep thinking I cannot believe what a difference that weekend made, but I think it's probably not just that weekend. I mean, I've been on a long journey of meditation and self-growth, but because before that weekend I was under so much stress, that weekend definitely helped me to reorganize my life, and that's what I needed at the time. And yeah, I feel a lot happier on Karma. I wrote down here, get more things done from intention. Yeah, so when I came back from that weekend, I was able to get a lot of things done that I wanted to get done, and then I sort of stopped because I was back at my regular job and I couldn't get a lot of other things done, but it was less about intentions, it was more about the lack of time. So actually the fact that I'm filming this video shows that that hasn't gone, just it had gone for the time being. Yeah, I don't, maybe I've already said that in the other video, but I wrote down, I have made decisions on issues I wanted to think about during the retreat. It's so interesting that when you just focus on what's going on in here for one weekend, that you can just get so many answers. Oh, it says stepping away from dark content. That's an interesting one. Yeah, and that has lasted. What I mean is, I've watched a lot of true crime. I still watch a little bit of that, but I watch very little. And I'm very aware. Now when I'm scrolling on YouTube and I get these suggestions, yes, sometimes I click on them, but honestly, I mostly don't. I really mostly don't, because I can literally feel in my body that it would change me if I watch too much of that. Because in life we always need to look at the good and the bad, and if we put an over focus on either, then we get out of balance and we don't see things clearly anymore. So I am really glad that I stopped putting too much attention on that, because that now gives me the ability to put the attention on other places, like filming a YouTube video or sitting down with a book or practicing for my choir. Oh, I wrote down, I'm not eating industrial sweets. No, I'm not eating sweets anymore. Yes, you know what? I have mostly changed to natural sweets, like nuts, dried fruits. I still eat a little bit of chocolate here and there, but I am so much more aware and I'm eating a lot less than I used to. And the reason is because I could feel the connection between all that rubbish I was putting into my body and the frustration and anger that built up. It was very obvious to me during the retreat. And therefore, when I came back, I made a conscious effort not to go back to where I was. Little side note that I just remembered is that I stopped this whole overeating that's happening in our society. So I wouldn't say I was generally a huge overeater, definitely not. However, there were some tendencies that I noticed where I didn't listen to my body. And after the retreat, during the retreat and after, I started to really listen to my body and stopped overfilling it. Started to make slightly smaller portions that were completely sufficient. And I think we do that a lot, that we eat with our eyes. Because of that feeling of hunger, we imagine it's a huge plate, but that's not actually what's right for our body. And I'm more in the moment, I wrote down. And that I still feel until this day. I was thinking that for the last few days, I am so much more enjoying the current moment than I used to. Yes, of course, there will be some thinking of the past and future. There always is. But I'm way more in the present than I used to be. So I would say pretty high success. I mean, honestly, never expected this. I mean, I didn't even go to the retreat for all of this. I'm just extremely grateful for it. Really extremely grateful that I was given this amazing positive change, because I literally only went because I felt a bit stressed and I thought one weekend of calming down would help me, which it did, but it had such a positive ripple effect, which is so amazing. Hope you enjoyed today's video. See you next time. Subscribe for more videos. Mwah!